So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Become Demigod and Built Harem in Slim Universe. So let's start the series. Himawari Uzumaki walked through the house in the middle of the night, yawning loudly. Her father, Naruto Uzumaki, was appointed the Nanadame Hokage 2 days prior. Unfortunately, she had knocked him unconscious while attempting to attack her brother Boruto for destroying her favorite stuffed animal, so none of them were able to attend the ceremony honoring his elevation. She was now heading to the kitchen to grab a glass of water when she became aware of something. The bedroom door of her parents was ajar. With a soft yawn, she moved on to the kitchen. Himawari stopped in her tracks when Hinata, her mother, said very loudly, "There's nothing they can do?" Himawari swiftly and silently returned to the door, where she saw her parents seated on the side of the bed across from it. "Nope," Naruto sighed, "Himawari did more damage than we initially thought. Even with Kurama helping to heal the injuries, it's only a matter of time." When Himawari heard this, she became pale and stopped breathing. With a tear in her eyes, Hinata asked, "But what about Tsunade-sama? Can't she do anything?" Tsunade said the risks outweigh the benefits. Naruto sorrowfully stated, "If it's a success, I live but I lose access to chakra and I'd be stuck with overwhelming pain for the rest of my life. I'd have to stop being Hokage." Naruto pulled Hinata into an embrace as she stammered, but through her sobs. Naruto reassured his wife, "It's going to be okay," adding, "You'll all be okay." In the meantime, Himawari was in tears because she had discussed this type of matter with her uncle and Hinata. She quickly returned to her room to sob into her pillow while sniffling. After a week, as the other 4 Kage stepped in and removed their hats, setting the round table down, Naruto sat quietly. Naruto closed his eyes and they all stared at him. "It's good to see you all, again," Naruto remarked with a fake smile and a dejected expression. Gaara asked inquisitively, "Naruto, is something wrong? I would have expected you to be more emotional at finally being named Hokage." "I was just about to say that," said Omoi, a rakage. "We all came to congratulate you on your appointment but you're acting like someone is dying." Naruto groaned and moved down to give him a head hug. "You kind of hit the nail on the head with that," he said. "Back when I was officially proclaimed Hokage, my daughter activated her Byakugan and accidentally struck me," stated Naruto. "She caused more damage than initially thought and I was given a prognosis that I have about a year." Silence fell soon. Naruto appeared to be maintaining his composure while the other Kage gave him startled looks. As she leaped to her feet, Kuratsuchi, the Tsuchikage, said, "Are you kidding me? You've only been Hokage for about a week." "Sadly, we have no other choice," said Naruto as he cocked his head slightly. "The surgery that could save me would force me to step down from the post as well as confine me to a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I can't force Hinata to take up such a burden with the kids as well. Plus, I've already talked this over with Kurama. He agreed to be sealed inside someone again and I want you all to help train them when they come of age." "Very well," Gaara says, nodding. "Have you told Sasuke about this?" you ask. "He's supposed to be by later today," told Naruto. "I sent him a letter when I found out. I'm going to talk to him about who I chose to be Kurama no Jinchuriki." Chojuro inquired, "And who did you select?" "For that person's sake, I don't think I should reveal it to anyone until I've spoken to Sasuke on the matter as he and Orochimaru are going to be the ones performing the sealing." Omoi squinted his eyes and asked, "Orochimaru is here?" He's under heavy guard and Tsunade is with him as well, assured Naruto before rising. If you all don't mind, I need to go speak to the person I selected to be Kurama's new host. The other Kage remained in startled silence as Naruto exited the room, leaving his cap behind. With a heavy burden on his shoulders, Naruto strolled through the village in a composed manner. He was distressed by his circumstances as he combed among the village's crowds. He was Hokage at last, and it was abruptly taken away from him. He shook his head and proceeded toward a barbecue restaurant where he knew the individual he was seeking would be. The restaurant was packed when he opened the door, and it soon became quiet as he walked in. Naruto approached the table where Boruto was seated with Shikadai, Chocho, and Sarada, ignoring the owner's rushed pleasantries. After a brief glance at each of them, he turned back to his son. "Come with me," he said impassively. Despite the lump in his throat, Boruto swiftly followed his father. Naruto guided Boruto through the cemetery and the settlement. Naruto led Boruto to a stone shrine that was leaning against a tree with a single kanji on it as they soon entered the forest that surrounded the settlement. Boruto simply stood there, perplexed at what was happening, as Naruto knelt down and prayed in front of it. "Boruto, if the time ever comes, I want you to do something for me," Naruto whispered softly as he opened his eyes slightly. Sasuke's frantic voice called out, "Naruto, the shrine," as it approached swiftly. Just as the shrine erupted, Naruto used all of his effort to push Boruto back. When Boruto looked up after rolling on the ground, he was horrified by what he saw. With dozens of kunai stuck in him and half of his limbs blasted off, Naruto was sprawled on the ground. Boruto screamed, "To-chan," and ran to his father's side. He started to take the weapons off, but Sasuke stopped him. Boruto glanced at Sasuke and said, "Keep him awake. I'll get help." "Those kunai could be stopping the bleeding," Sasuke remarked. Then, as Boruto held Naruto's hand and wept, he fled. The blood gathered in Naruto's mouth as he muttered, "Boru, please, keep your sister," smiling. Boruto said, "Come on, To-chan. You can't die." As he saw people swarm around him, Naruto thought, "I don't like it. It's too hot." Naruto opened his eyes after yawning, but he noticed something strange. He was resting on his stomach, and he felt as if he had no hands. He also felt an itch behind his left ear, which he scratched at with his hind left paw. Naruto halted in disbelief, thinking, "Wait, how am I able to do that?" Naruto felt fur on his body with the paw pads on his forepaws, and he had 2 rather long ears for a fox, but he shook that thought off as he had more important things to do. Naruto took a few deep breaths and spent some time examining himself and his surroundings with everything except his lost sense of sight. He was rather small, and based on the feeling of his limbs, he seemed to be some kind of fox, based on the long flowing tail that he pulled on with his teeth that also tugged at his rear. With his new sense of smell, he discovered the air was damp and he could smell dirt everywhere. He could hear the faint sound of water drops falling all about him and other objects in the distance. When he tried to speak, all he got was an adorable little growl and a few tiny yips. Naruto went around on his new paws and thought, based on this, I'm probably in a cave somewhere, wondering whether he had reincarnated or anything. Then he came to a complete halt and said, "It's unbelievable that I overlooked the most crucial detail." With only a slit between his rear legs, he sat down and reached before he fell to the ground. Naruto thought sadly, "There goes my little Hokage," and then she carried on walking. She stepped on what felt like a plant while she was walking, but what was odd was that it appeared to be decomposing beneath her feet. Naruto chose to ignore it for the moment as her stomach began to growl. She smelled the plant in front of her and thought, what I wouldn't give for some Ichiraku ramen right now, wondering if this would taste well. Gagging at the taste, she spat up the plant after lowering her muzzle and biting into it. As she trod on the plant and felt it melt beneath her feet, Naruto thought in misery, "It's so bitter, all right, what's going on? When I stomp on it, why does it dissolve?" Naruto gingerly placed some weight on her leg and discovered that it was stable after hearing it crack back into place. So, even if I'm painless, I nonetheless sustain damage? At least it's doing the job this time, she thought. However, I must use greater caution. You heard me, little one. A loud, deep voice said. Startled by this new voice, she froze, turned to the wall, and looked around, trying to find the source. Hey! I know you can hear me, the voice said, growing more irate. Why are you the one speaking to me? Fearfully, Naruto thought. Answer me, the voice insisted. You can say that with ease. Thinking of Naruto, she said, how can I speak if I can't use these voice cords to create words? Hey! The voice said. Stop talking, Baldy, Naruto thought with nearly equal rage. Oh? You called me Baldy, asked the curious voice. You seem brave to me. Naruto said, suddenly tense. The voice's owner yelled so loudly that the cave rocked, sending some boulders falling and others breaking, and Naruto shielded her ears as the force of the sound waves dried her out. The voice was annoyed and stated, I was trying to be nice since I haven't had a visitor in so long, but you seem to have a death wish. I had no clue you could hear my thoughts, Naruto thought, letting out a deep sigh. This guy reminds me so much of Kurama when we first met, he said. I can only yap and growl because I'm blind. Naruto seemed perplexed as the speaker laughed in the same manner that Kurama used to. The fact that you said that after seeing me astounded me, but it appears that you are unable to notice me, huh? All right, the voice said. I'll grant you sight. What? Quizzically, Naruto inquired. The speaker added, but there will be conditions. What do you think? What kinds of circumstances? Suspiciously asked Naruto. It's easy, the voice stated coolly, you have to come talk to me again and you shouldn't be afraid of me when you can see me. Isn't it a terrific deal for you? I just have to do that, she raised an eyebrow and asked Naruto. Yes, the voice said, you see, I was locked here 300 years ago. It's been incredibly dull and I haven't had much to do since. What are your thoughts? Naruto started, I wonder why you were sealed, but... And then she nodded, all right. I'll be happy to. Very excellent, the voice responded, magic sense is a skill. Is it usable? What are your thoughts? Naruto tilted her head, thinking. The voice clarified that, it allows you to sense the magicules around you. So, I'll be able to see if I find magicules? Uncertain about this, Naruto asked, I suppose I'll give it a shot. As she concentrated, Naruto bowed her head and closed her eyes. She gasped as she felt something, and the cave as a whole became apparent to her as glittering particles illuminated the space. Additional ability, magic sense gained. That fast? Questioned Naruto, hold on. Extra? Abilities that are magnitudes more powerful and efficient than typical abilities. That sounds fantastic, excitedly, Naruto thought, it's like learning a new jutsu. Do you want to make use of magic sense? Yes. Naruto thought nearly immediately. She looked around at all the magic ore that was scattered on the floor before sprinting to the small lake, where Naruto could see that she was a deep shade of red with large black patches around her white eyes. A brief breeze blew out from her, scattering the magicules in a way that allowed her to see through them. Naruto thought gleefully, I look almost exactly like Kurama, but then her attitude abruptly soured. All right? The voice behind her inquired. Naruto spun around and jumped in front of the voice's owner, thinking, oh, yeah, I did it. Many thanks. Then she looked up and was astounded by what she saw, a huge dragon with pale blue undersides and black scales, its big golden eyes gleaming indifferently down at Naruto. Wonderful, Naruto thought apathetically, a dragon after a giant fox first. As it gestured Naruto forward and she complied, the dragon said, normally, I would have expected a more surprised reaction. Now, allow me to formally introduce myself, it said. Naruto said, oh okay, offended by the dragon's actions. Calmly, the dragon declared, I am the storm dragon, Veldora. Dragon Storm. Naruto seemed a little perplexed by the title, so she thought. Veldora said, I'm one of only 4 true dragons that exist in the world, and then he burst out laughing. Veldora's laughter was hurting Naruto's ears, so she swiftly shoved them down. Hey, you do recall what we said? Veldora inquired earnestly. As Naruto stroked an itch behind her right ear, she thought, yeah, well, I'll come by to chat again later. She turned and started to walk, making a hasty attempt to get away. Hold on. This is really strange, Veldora said, making Naruto jump. Normal foxes are often low-ranking, dim-witted creatures. Let me tell you that I'm a kitsune, surprised to be referred to as a normal fox, Naruto pondered. Besides, I was a human before I died. Veldora said, I see, you were reincarnated. So, I really was reborn as a kitsune, mournfully pondered Naruto. Veldora said, you entered this realm in a very uncommon way. Sometimes people from other worlds come here. However, you are the first person who has reborn here that I am aware of. Most wouldn't be able to endure having their souls travel across different planets. So, you're implying that some people have arrived here without reincarnating? Naruto inquired, seeming a little excited by this information. Yes, Veldora said, we refer to them as otherworlders. I've heard that when they enter this planet, they get unique talents. Naruto rolled her eyes and then turned back to the dragon in front of her. That must explain why I have so many skills, she mused. I think I'd like to try and find some of these otherworlders. What? Veldora looked away, seeming hurt, and folded his arms and front legs. You're leaving already? Naruto thought, now this is something Kurama never did, yet he couldn't help but laugh. I suppose I can stay a little longer, he said. It's not like I have much to do right now, really. Oh, excellent. As he turned back to Naruto, Veldora joyfully yelled, stay as long as you like. You did say that you were sealed here previously, right? As she proceeded to relieve herself behind a rock, Naruto questioned. Thank you for asking that. It was 300 years ago, Veldora remarked, turning his head aside and closing his eyes to remember his story. I accidentally reduced a town to ashes. How can you accidentally reduce a town to ashes? As she emerged from behind the boulder, Naruto pondered. Ignoring Naruto's query, Veldora went on, someone came looking to slay me, adding, "It's definitely true that I underestimated my opponent a bit." About halfway through, I began giving the fight my all, he said, glancing down at Naruto with his claws on his hips, but I still lost. Naruto urged him, "You do appear very strong despite that." "Was your opponent strong?" "Very powerful," Veldora agreed. The individual in question was seen as a hero who was endowed with divine protection. Naruto chewed on an itchy spot between her hind legs and thought, "Sounds sort of like me back during the war with Pain then Kaguya. She overpowered me with her unique skill, Absolute Severance, showed the Storm Dragon. Then she sealed me using unlimited imprisonment." Then Naruto noticed the rainbow-colored, glossy veil she had collided with before, which seemed to flex and stretch around Veldora, allowing him to move about to feel comfortable but limiting his options. "I assume the unlimited imprisonment is that veil?" As she walked forward and touched the curtain, which solidified at her touch, Naruto questioned. Veldora sighed and agreed, "Yeah, the hero called herself a summon. I assume that individual was called to this planet, is I correct?" As she started to piece things together, Naruto thought. "Yes," Veldora replied, "it'd take a group of more than 30 mages to perform a ritual that lasts several days to bring one here from another world." "So, mages are also present here?" "I've always wanted to learn magic," inquired Naruto eagerly. Veldora disclosed, "They are also expected to serve as powerful weapons," which made Naruto hesitate. "I see," Naruto thought, her sudden excitement quickly fading. "Then they're just like Jinchuriki back home. To ensure that the summon cannot resist the summoner's will, magic is used to carve a curse into the summoned soul," Veldora continued, his voice heavy with sorrow. "That's absurd," Naruto thought fiercely, "we had summons in my previous planet too, but we never did anything that terrible." "Then you came from a kinder world than this one," Veldora with a smile, "but survival of the fittest is the prevailing truth in this world." Naruto said, "I see," before deciding to shift the topic. "So, you've been in here since the hero sealed you?" "That's right," Veldora said, now dejected, "there's nothing to do and no one to talk to, so it's really boring here." In an attempt to console the Storm Dragon, Naruto replied, "I felt quite lonely for the first 12 years of my previous existence because I had no one. I can't imagine what it's like to feel like that for 300 years. Naruto then made her decision immediately, saying, "All right. How about we become friends?" "What?" "A mere kitsune offers friendship to me, the feared Storm Dragon," yelled Veldora angrily, glaring down at Naruto. Naruto thought, "Well, if you do want to be friends then I guess I'll be leaving," and turned to go. "Hold on. I never said I didn't want to," Veldora exclaimed before turning away in shame. Knowing that she had won the dragon, Naruto grinned. "So, what is your response?" With joy, Naruto asked. In an attempt to avoid coming out as overly eager, Veldora began uneasily, "Yes, well. If you insist. I guess I'm willing to think about it." "What a tsundere this guy is," thought Naruto in disbelief before taking a large jump to Veldora and held out a paw, "then it's settled. If you say no, we're done. I will never return here." "Well, all right," exclaimed Veldora quickly as he looked back at Naruto and bumped fists with him through the unlimited imprisonment, "I'll be your friend." "You should be thankful. You simply cannot be truthful, can you?" As a tiny luminous light glowed from their contact, Naruto was teased. Konoha. Himawari stood in the rain, staring down at her father's grave, tears streaming down her face as the raindrops pretended to be tears from everyone around her. She had a bunch of flowers in her hands, the 15th bouquet she had brought today, and her breathing was labored as she sat the flowers on the grave before collapsing to her knees and sobbing loudly, oblivious to the fact that she was getting wet and that her clothes were getting muddy fast. Arriving at the graveyard with a coat for Himawari, Boruto hurriedly covered her before embracing her and letting her sob into his shoulder until she passed out. Hinata soon followed, carrying Himawari back to the village while Boruto rubbed his eyes and gazed down at Naruto Uzumaki's grave. Boruto declared, "I swear that I'll keep Himawari smiling," and turned to leave. Looking around at the dome of light encircling Veldora, Naruto pondered, "So, what are we going to do about this thing? It does make me feel bad knowing my friend's been stuck here for 300 years. Veldora remarked, "You." As an odd tenderness that didn't seem to belong there showed up in his eyes. Naruto retreated a little, uneasy at Veldora's stare, thinking, "Please, don't try giving me those eyes, it creeps me out." Veldora turned away and reared up on his hind legs, folding his front ones before saying, "If you have a way to get me out, I'd appreciate it. The thing is, I wouldn't have lasted another 100 years before my magic would have run out. I keep losing more and more magicules. So, that's why this cave is so full of magicules and there are so many valuable herbs and ores," Naruto mused as she surveyed the area's herbs and ores before turning to face Veldora. "What happens if your magic runs out?" she asked. The statement, "It's not a big deal," Veldora said nonchalantly, "I'll just die." With that response, Naruto fell to the ground, yet he sighed deeply. She touched the unlimited imprisonment with her paw as she approached it. Before she tried using Predator, it felt strange on her paw pad. After 5 seconds, her paw's smoke had solidified again. Failure. "See," Veldora said, "I told you it's useless." Ignoring him, Naruto and Great Sage discussed a number of concepts. Veldora was deeply offended by this. He yelled, "Hey! Don't just keep talking to your skill." Once more, Naruto disregarded Veldora as the Great Sage reviewed a number of more concepts. A few minutes later, Naruto made up his mind. Naruto told the Storm Dragon, "It's just a possibility, but she says if we can analyze the unlimited imprisonment from both inside and out, we might be able to remove it." Veldora said, "I see," before realizing the issue. "But I can't analyze it from the inside. My skills were sealed along with me so I can't use them. If you just give me the data, I can analyze it from out here," Naruto said coolly. Reminding Naruto that, but that would take some time, Veldora leaned over him and asked, "Are you sure you want to stay in here that long?" Naruto flinched back and turned away, saying, "Well, not that I mind, but..." "Good point," Naruto said, "I'd like to search for people from other worlds while I'm here." "I see," the distraught Storm Dragon murmured. Naruto calmly thought, "So, here's what I propose," gaining Veldora's full attention. "Want to get in my stomach?" he asked. Veldora paused, hard to believe what he was hearing. Naruto immediately relayed what Great Sage was saying him while perspiring, not really since he was in a vulpine body. A vision of Veldora breathing fire against the barrier from the opposite side flashed into Naruto's mind. "I'll use my skills, Predator and Great Sage, to analyze unlimited imprisonment while you try to destroy it from the inside," she thought. "You'll be quarantined in my stomach, so you won't disappear. What do you say?" When Veldora started laughing, Naruto swiftly covered her ears, and Veldora stopped when he saw it. Veldora uttered a little laugh as he continued, "That sounds interesting. Do it. I entrust my entirety to you." As she nearly lost her face once more, Naruto asked, "Are you sure you want to believe me that easily?" "Of course," Veldora replied. "It sounds more fun to break through the unlimited imprisonment together than to wait here alone until you come back." "Sounds good," Naruto thought eagerly. Veldora said bluntly, "I'll give you a name before we begin." "You can give me one too." Unable to understand Veldora's point, Naruto asked, "Huh?" Veldora got up on his hind legs and stated, "It will engrave onto our souls the fact that we are equals. It will be what humans call a family name, but the name I give you will grant you divine protection and you will become a monster with a name because you are still nameless." As she turned away, worried, Naruto thought, "A monster with a name? I've been going by Naruto for so long that it'll be strange to use something else. A good name for Veldora." She gave this careful thinking. She couldn't just name him after someone from her world, was she? It wasn't like she was skilled at coming up with names, and she wanted a distinctive one. Sakura had mockingly told her that the names were creative when she had told her about the names of her children in her previous life. After considering Veldora's title as the Storm Dragon, she began to move forward. Tempest. "What do you think of Tempest?" she thought happily. "I've got it." Veldora cried out, "What? Tempest, you say? Volume." Naruto thought, pressing her ears flat against her body. Ignoring Naruto, Veldora exclaimed, "As of today, I'm Veldora Tempest." As Naruto fought to stop the ringing in her ears, she thought, "I'm glad you like the name, but I think you may have made me gone deaf." Veldora spoke to Naruto, "And I will grant you the name of Kushina," and Naruto froze. Kushina. Naruto thought, not knowing the name because it had belonged to her mother in a past life. When Veldora sensed the emotions underneath Naruto's thoughts, he asked, "Something wrong? Do you not like the name?" The young kitsune became a little caught up at this point as a lump entered her throat. "Oh, no," said Naruto. "It's a great name, but my mother's name was Kushina in my previous life." Veldora nodded and said, "Ah, that is a problem. I found out she died protecting me the day I was born in my previous life," stated Naruto. "But she's perhaps the strongest woman I've ever known. I may not be comfortable with it, but I'm sure it'll grow on me." Veldora called, "Tell me, young kitsune, what was your name in your previous life?" "It was Naruto," Naruto said with assurance. "Very well," Veldora replied, "your name shall be Kushina Tempest. But the name Naruto Tempest will also be there should you feel you no longer are comfortable with your first name." Naruto thought, Kushina Tempest, but then she sensed something quickly growing inside of her. She had the uncontrollable feeling that something was going to blow up inside of her. In an instant, Naruto, or rather, Kushina, took on the appearance of smoke before reverting to her previous appearance, although with two tails instead of one. She asked Great Sage, "What was that?" When Great Sage said those words, Kushina froze. Kushina leaped into the air and launched two water blades from the tips of her tail as she darted out from behind the rock. The serpent's head was cut off by the water's blades, and its body collapsed to the ground. Kushina landed between the shocked foxes and the corpse and turned to face them. Through a succession of barks and yips, Kushina asked, "You okay?" As they rushed to Kushina and put her head around her shoulder, the largest of the three cried, "You're okay." I thought you had died after that fall. My little runt. And Mama? Kushina exclaimed, startled. One of the two surviving foxes said in a feminine voice, "Is that really you, sister?" "It has to be," the lone fox stated in a manly voice. "She smells like her." Kushina's mother inquired, "What happened to you? Why do you have two tails now?" "Oh, Veldora gave me a name for helping free him from his prison," Kushina said nonchalantly. As a result, the three of them immediately retreated from her, not far, but far enough to demonstrate their surprise. The sister cried out in terror, Why you mean to say you freed that dragon down below?" As she sat down and sheepishly scratched behind her left ear, Kushina admitted, "Well, not exactly. I just used a skill to analyze his prison and he's currently residing in the space inside me until I can break it," she said. "You seem to be a true kitsune if you have two tails," the mother observed carefully as she approached. Kushina sighed and turned back to her tails before turning to face the corpse of the serpent. "Yeah," she murmured, "I'm just lucky that I got here in time." "Curious," the sister asked, "if you spoke with that dragon, does that mean you have a name?" Kushina looked at her sister and answered, "Yeah, my name is Kushina Tempest." Before the two-tailed kitsune approached the snake's body and severed head, the three foxes gazed in wonder at Kushina. Kushina asked herself, "Wouldn't I be able to take its abilities if I use Predator to eat this snake and analyze it?" Remembering what the serpent had nearly done to her new family, she gazed into its lifeless eyes. Before she transformed into her smoke form and engulfed the serpent's body, she experienced a raging rage. She disintegrated it and used her smoke form to absorb the body before reforming. Since she hadn't been physically present when she had absorbed it, she wasn't sure how the weird flavor that filled her tongue could have caused her to gag. The analysis is finished. Skills learned: sense heat source and poisonous breath. Now you can imitate Black Serpent. Kushina wondered curiously, mimic, huh? And I can also breathe poison and sense heat sources. As he and the rest of Kushina's family drew closer, the terrified brother asked, Sister, what did you just do?" Kushina said nonchalantly, "Oh, I just absorbed the snake and gained its powers," before raising her head and saying, "Come on. I want to get to the surface soon." The mother inquired inquisitively, "The surface? Why would you want to go up there?" "Because I heard from Veldora it's large and endless," said Kushina. "He also told me that creatures up there were less dangerous than in here, so we should be able to find a safe place to live if we make it." With concern in her voice, the sister said, "But what are we going to do about food in here? We struggle to find something to eat as it is." Kushina boldly raced up to her sister and said, "I'll tell you what. I'll take care of any monsters we find on the way. Tell me when you're hungry, and I'll kill the next monster we find so we can eat it." After exchanging glances, the three foxes finally decided. Kushina led them into the cave's immense darkness as they set off. Later, it was easy to say that it was possibly the happiest time Kushina could recall since learning of her approaching death in her previous life, even though she was unsure of how much time had elapsed. For the second time in her life, she had a family to chat to and enjoy. However, things hadn't always been simple. Almost as soon as they had begun their journey to the surface, they had come across an Armosaurus. Kushina had swiftly slain it with poisonous breath, imitating the black serpent she had previously eaten. It goes without saying that Kushina was so repulsed by the sight of rotting flesh that she promised never to employ that tactic again. After that, Kushina came across a black spider that allowed her to employ several types of thread and an evil centipede, from which she learned the paralysis breath skill. They needed to cross wide canyons in the cave to continue, thus learning the thread skills was helpful. Additionally, it made it simple for her to trap food for her family and herself. Kushina treated herself to a giant bat when they were feasting on some smaller creatures. She gained the abilities of Drain and Ultrasonic Wave as a result. Kushina benefited greatly from this since she was able to communicate in real language after switching out the organ she used for speaking with the one the giant bat used. Fortunately, when she practiced, her family could understand her when she used words. After what seemed like an eternity, they finally reached a big iron door that prevented them from moving on. With caution, the sister said, "Is this the exit, Kushina?" "Seems like it," Kushina replied. "I don't think I'll be able to break through it, though." Before the 4 Vulpine genus members froze, the brother questioned, "Then how are we supposed to get through it?" The doors began to tremble and open gradually. The mother yelled, "Hide," and they all fled to the door's shadows. They saw 3 people enter as light streamed through the entrance. The third was a girl with long blonde hair holding a staff, while the other 2 were men, one of whom looked to be a thief and the other a swordsman. The thief sighed and remarked, "It's finally open, but the keyhole is falling apart because it's so rusty." "That's not surprising," the swordsman said, "because no one has visited this place in 300 years. As the girl moved forward and a jewel on top of her staff glowed, lighting up the surroundings, she remarked, "We won't be attacked out of the blue, right?" "Of course, if it comes to it, we can always use escape." "These are the first humans I've seen in this life," Kushina paused. "I don't know why they're here, but I guess they're adventurers." "Wait. How can I understand them?" "Respond." Sound waves carrying intention are transformed into understandable speech with the usage of magic sense. You can also communicate by creating sound waves that transmit your thoughts. "Well, that helps," said Kushina, "although, I don't think it would be a good idea to say hello to them since they'd probably just attack us." As the other 2 regarded him, the thief said, "All right, I'm going to use my stealth arts." Kushina and the foxes appeared curious as the other 2 humans formed a closed ranks with the thief. The 3 humans disappeared when the thief punched his left hand. Footprints on the ground indicated the trio was moving closer, and the foxes and kitsune's jaws fell. Kushina murmured, "Now, make a dash for the exit," and rushed out the door. Following, the 3 foxes gazed in wonder at the azure sky and the verdant woodland surrounding them. They approached a tree and rested at its base, the sound of tweeting birds filling their ears. Kushina stood watch as the 3 foxes dozed off. As she lay in the tree's shade, Kushina thought, "This is nice. I never really had a chance to just sit and enjoy nature for a long time. I wish Veldora could see this. I know he will eventually, but it's a little boring without his booming voice." She stared up at the various bird species flying across the treetops and laughed, saying, "I'll have to make a lot of funny stories to tell him when I see him again." She was startled out of her reverie by the sound of rushing, and the foxes all turned to gaze down the narrow dirt path they were on. According to what Great Sage told Kushina, 24 goblins wearing armor and improvised weapons appeared to be approaching them. As Kushina prepared to protect her family, she saw that they all seemed afraid of her. Kushina thought, "They look pretty weak," as she looked at their guns casually. "And their weapons are rusted and about to break." The goblin in front said, "Strong one, what business do you have here?" Kushina was truly perplexed by this and looked around before pointing with one of her front paws at herself. The goblin that spoke gave a nod. As she inhaled deeply, Kushina thought, well, I just need to convey my thoughts. Hello. I'm a kitsune and my name is Kushina. The outcome was not what Kushina had hoped for. The sheer volume and force of her use had knocked the goblins down, and they had thrown their swords aside. Once all the goblins had knelt down and bowed to her, the previous goblin exclaimed, "We are aware of how strong you are, ma'am. Please, quiet your voice." "Sorry," Kushina said, becoming quieter as she rubbed behind one ear shyly. "Do you need anything?" she asked. The same goblin once more explained, "We came as a precaution because we sensed a powerful monster." "I don't sense anything like that," Kushina remarked, surveying her surroundings. "He means you, Kushina," the mother softly clarified. "Me?" Kushina said, turning back to face her mother. The goblin continued, "Strong one, we would like to ask you a favor after witnessing your power." "Well, okay," Kushina responded warily, "take me and my family to some shelter and we'll talk." Kushina and her family were swiftly seized by the goblins, who then sprinted into the forest as fast as their small feet would allow. This pleasantly surprised Kushina, who looked up at the group leader who had been holding her as they approached a little town where a number of goblin children were assisting their mothers in rebuilding their homes. "Make sure my family is taken care of first, then you can tell me what's going on," quietly replied Naruto. The goblin clutching Kushina exclaimed, "Oh hey! Make sure those three are comfortable." While the goblin carrying Kushina herself led her inside what seemed to be the elder's hut, the other three carried her family into one of the smaller huts. On top of a little pile of dirt, he seated Kushina on a filthy cloth. A few minutes later, the goblin elder entered and knelt before her alongside the group leader. Between him and Kushina, the senior placed his staff on the ground and inhaled. Wheezily, the elder remarked, "I am the elder of this village. Welcome, visitor." "I kind of got that," Kushina said, nodding. "So, what favor did you want to ask of me?" he said. "Have you noticed that monsters have been unusually active as of late?" inquired the elderly man. "No," Kushina responded warily. "1 month ago, our god disappeared," stated the elder. "As a result, monsters in the area have been continuously harassing us." Kushina pondered, so, Veldora must have been their god, temporarily averting her eyes. "That would mean that I was down there for a month. It just seems like his presence was keeping the monsters away from the village." The elder started, "We tried to fight them back, but we lack the numbers." "But I'm just a kitsune at stage 2, Kushina calmly countered, "I doubt I would be able to do much." As he and the leader of the team that had located Kushina smiled anxiously, the elder laughed and said, "Please, don't be modest. A mere stage 2 kitsune would not emit such an aura. You're quite a famous monster, are you not?" Kushina was a little disturbed by this. Since Veldora had given her her name, she had never sensed any changes in herself, but she was intrigued by what these goblins had been saying. Kushina ordered herself in her mind, "Great sage, change the perspective of magic sense so I can look at myself." Shifting viewpoint. The gigantic dark atmosphere that pervaded every nook and cranny of the room made Kushina gag. "I don't think I even had this much chakra when I was human, which is why the goblins were afraid of me and my family," Kushina thought in a panic. "But, of course you cannot hide the formidable air about you," the elder said. "So, you figured it out," Kushina lied, choosing to follow the elder's instructions. "You guys must have great potential," she said, forcing herself to breathe in her aura before exhaling in relief. "Looks like I got it all," she said, noticing multiple other goblins peering in from a gap in the flap covering the door. "What are they doing?" she asked. After stretching her back and legs, Kushina sat down. The fragrance of blood permeated the air, and she could smell it. The elder started, as for the favor we wish to ask." A few minutes later, "So, dire wolves are attacking them from the east," Kushina pondered calmly. "And the vast amount of their warriors died in the raids," she said with a sigh of dismay before looking up and asking, "How many fighters do we have?" The senior said, "We have 60 who can fight, counting the females." Kushina inquired inquisitively, "Did the goblin warrior you have go in knowing he was going to die?" "No," the elder, who was on the edge of tears judging by his shaking body, replied. "That warrior just gave his life retrieving information on the dire wolves for us," he continued, bowing to Kushina and the goblin who had carried him inside the hut. "The warrior was my son and his elder brother." Before noticing that children had taken up residence in the flap's crack, Kushina apologized and said, "Elder, I have one thing to ask." "Yes?" inquired the older, uncertain of what would happen next. "If I help you, what will you give me in return?" replied Kushina. "I don't really want anything, but I need to put up a strong show." As loudly as his weak body would permit, the elder cried out, "We will offer you our loyalty. Please, grant us your protection. If you do, we will swear loyalty to you, Kushina-sama." As she rolled her eyes, Kushina thought, "He must have spoken to the others before coming to see me so he would know my name. Well, I can't exactly say no if they will let us stay here," she said. The silence was broken by a howl, and everyone turned to face the source. The elder and his son hurried away to comfort the frightened villagers. Everyone froze at the sudden emergence of Kushina's aura, which she then released before holding it back once more. "We will battle them," Kushina declared to the crowd. "I, Kushina Tempest, will fulfill your wish in place of the storm dragon Veldora." The goblins all started crying and bowed to Kushina, appreciating her generosity. After a few more minutes, standing before all of the goblins who had offered to fight, Kushina observed their weakness and lack of muscle. "I don't want to see any of you die," said Kushina. "Just do your best and that's all I expect of you." All of the goblins exclaimed, "Yes," and Kushina blushed if she could. Kushina gave the order, "Now, take me to where all the injured are." After being hurried to a medium-sized cabin, she saw 14 goblins with various wounds bandaged. Before an idea struck her, she examined the wounds and noted their depth. She briefly absorbed all of the goblins into her body before spitting them out in front of the elder who had accompanied them after changing into her smoke form. Then she turned to the happy goblins and laughed. She informed them, "Now, we'll build a fence." After giving the directions, she searched the village but couldn't find her family. "Oh hey," she exclaimed, calling out to a goblin that was passing by. "Where are my mother and siblings?" When Kushina followed the goblin to another tent, she saw that her mother, brother, and sister were ready to sleep. "Sister, you're back," the sister shouted, running to give Kushina a quick nuzzle. "Yeah," said Kushina. "But I can't stay long. I have to help with the preparations for the dire wolves. I just came to check up on you three." "We've been doing fine," the brother replied. "The goblins have been in here several times to make sure we're comfortable. They're all really nice. Kushina, are you sure about this? Questioned the worried mother. I appreciate what the goblins are doing for us, but I'm concerned about what could happen if you fail to stop the dire wolves. I swear that I will never let them lay a single hair upon any of you, said Kushina. By the way, I'm getting tired of just calling you all mama, sister, and brother, so I'm just gonna give you names. These statements surprised the three foxes, who were immediately alert and showed no signs of sleepiness. The sister yelled, Why you can't be serious. We're just regular foxes. We're not worthy of names. She looked at the sister and started to come up with a name. You will be Senko, you will be Shippo, and you will be, Kushina pointed out to her mother. Nonsense, she sneered. You three are my family and I will give my life to protect my family. She encountered an obstacle at this point. Since this fox was her mother, she had to give her a noble name that would both honor and demonstrate her gentleness and kindness. It had to be about forgiveness as much as strength. Koyanskaya, cried Kushina, you are Koyanskaya Tempest, Shippo, and Senko. Kushina felt dizzy as the three foxes began to sparkle. As her relatives approached, she stumbled and fell to her knees. Senko yelled, Shina-chan, as the three foxes, who were now given names, attempted to assist her. That was weird, Kushina remarked with concern. When I gave them their names, I suddenly felt like I couldn't stay awake anymore. Did something happen? She told her family she was okay and pushed the notion away before heading out to aid the goblins. That evening, Kushina waited while sitting in front of the fence she had given the goblins instructions to construct. She took a time to gather herself after ensuring the safety of her family. She thought about what she had said about sacrificing herself to keep her family safe. It was the second time she had done it. But her family had suffered greatly as a result of that at the time. They had shed tears over it. Kushina's heart ached so much at the thought of those weeping faces that a tear escaped her blind eyes. She heard the sound of quick footsteps coming from ahead of her at that moment. A group of dire wolves stopped a few dozen yards from her and the fence, and she forced those thoughts out of her head. Kushina fiercely cautioned, leave immediately or we won't take any action against you. Turn back now. The dire wolf commander yelled, insolence. No mere fox can order us dire wolves around. Trample down that fence. Spill the blood of those lowly goblins. The dire wolves charged at the howl of the alpha. A wave of arrows from the goblins behind the fence killed a few as the others charged. But when their companions died for what seemed to be no apparent reason, they all stopped. The alpha then saw blood dripping from something that was nearly undetectable to the human sight to the ground. Thread? The alpha asked. That's my steel thread skill, Kushina clarified, appearing somewhat more composed. The alpha, this is your doing? Demanded. Kushina told the alpha, that's right, and shook her butt. What you gonna do about it? She asked. The alpha yelled, I will squash you, as he charged. Father, yelled the star-furred dire wolf that had been standing by the alpha. After tearing through his deceased pack's field and slicing the steel thread with his teeth, the alpha charged at Kushina, who didn't even blink. The fact that the alpha had halted in midair and was straining to get rid of sticky thread that he hadn't noticed startled them all. That is another one of my skill, stated Kushina. Now, I pray you find calm in the afterlife. She then twirled in place, launching a water blade from one of her tails. After a time, the alpha's body was motionless and his head lay on the ground. Kushina moved toward the corpse while the goblins and dire wolves gaped in disbelief. She transformed into her smoke form, ate it with Predator, and then changed back to her regular shape, this time with 3 tails. The analysis is finished. Developed the capacity to imitate dire wolf. The dire wolf species developed the abilities of menace, thought communication, and supreme sense of smell. Take note. The transition to Stage 3 has been completed and sufficient strength has been gained. As a huge cloud of smoke surrounded Kushina, she thought, okay, but it soon dissipated, revealing a larger version of the dire wolf she had just eaten that loomed above the other dire wolves. With an evil laugh, Kushina caused the dire wolves to gasp in surprise. "Hear me," she said, "I will let you go just this once. If you refuse to yield to me, I will allow you to leave this place." Then she let out a loud, frightful growl using menace. The dire wolves held their ground despite bracing themselves against the roar's ferocity. This frightened the goblins behind her as well. Slowly, the dire wolves approached Kushina, who by now was having difficulty keeping menace moving. Kushina thought quickly, "Come on. Just go already." As soon as the dire wolves came within a yard of Kushina, they all fell on the ground with their heads slightly bent, just like the son of the Alpha had done. They all yelled, "Our pack yields to you," at once. Completely bewildered, Kushina stopped using menace and transformed back into her actual form. The elder goblin's kid inquired, did we win?" Still not sure what was going on with the dire wolves, Kushina stated, "I've got to admit, I was getting tired of fighting almost non-stop for the past month. It seems like they won't attack anymore." After the goblins applauded, Kushina turned to face the dire wolves who had been subdued. She approached and looked directly at the son of the Alpha she had just slain. "I'm sorry that I killed your father," Kushina said, surprising the dire wolf. "I know it must cause you some pain to lose family like that, but I assure you that you and the rest of your pack will find a place with all of the goblins," she continued. "You all can sleep outside the fence. I'll have them dismantle it first thing in the morning." Kushina then went to spend the night at the hut where her family was staying. Shippo, Senko, and Koyanskaya were all in a heap inside, dead asleep. After what seemed like an eternity, Kushina smiled, joined the lump with her family, and went to sleep. The day after, Kushina stood behind the elder on a tree stump, watching the anxious goblins and dire wolves now mingled. Her family was watching carefully while they slept in the shade of a hut. Before deciding, Kushina observed that the number of dire wolves appeared to be equal to the village's population. The gathering listened intently as she said, "Listen up. So, I'm going to have you all pair up and live together," she said. Immediately, the crowd asked, "Pair up?" "It means to form groups of 2, Kushina calmly stated. "Now, every goblin should find a dire wolf they want to pair with and stand by them." It took a few minutes for them to be paired up. Being the odd one out, the elder stayed alone. Kushina declared with pride, "Today's friend is yesterday's enemy. You're all to work together as friends from now on. Got it?" "Yes, ma'am," the audience said. Kushina exclaimed, "Help each other and work it out," before letting out a sigh and saying, "What's going to be important now is food, shelter, and clothing. We should form teams to hunt for food, build houses, and strengthen the village's defenses. We'll start with..." Her gaze landed on the elder's son, who had brought her to the village yesterday, but she trailed off when she realized she didn't know his name. "Hey, what are all your names, anyway?" she asked the elder. We monsters do not normally have names, remarked the elderly man. Even without names, we can still communicate our thoughts to one another. Before turning back to the audience, Kushina said, "Oh, really? But, it's more convenient to have names, so I'd like to name you all." "That okay?" It was a distinguishing sound. The yell of surprise from the entire crowd was so loud that Kushina had to hide her ears. This even surprised her family. The elder asked startledly, "And name us?" "Are you sure?" Kushina hesitantly said, "Es sure," which the audience saw as affirmation. Kushina pondered what she had gotten herself into as they all applauded. "Give me a moment, and we'll begin the naming," Kushina replied, approaching her family. "Are you three all right?" she asked. With concern in her voice, Koyenskaya asked, "Kushina, are you sure about giving them all names? You named the three of us yesterday and almost passed out." "I'm fine," Kushina reassured her, not understanding her worry. "Besides, it's the least I can do after they gave us shelter," she said, turning back to face the onlookers. "And I feel like I owe those dire wolves since I killed their alpha." "Really?" Senko questioned, both startled and terrified. "But those dire wolves are the same kind as the ones that killed Papa." "They are?" Kushina inquired. "Papa gave his life so we could escape those beasts," asked Shippo fiercely. "How could you forget? I believe I told when we were traveling through the cave that I don't really remember much before I met Veldora," explained Kushina with a long sigh, "but these dire wolves yielded to me and the goblins worship me as a god or something." He continued to gaze at the ground with sadness. "I remember that in my previous life that I died protecting my son." Her family was taken aback. "I don't know how my father in this life would react to you living with dire wolves, but I want to give them a chance. Just like Veldora gave me a chance to see again." After forming a circle around Kushina, the three foxes brought their heads together with hers. "We'll do whatever you think is best," Koyenskaya stated softly, adding, "Just know that we are here with you if you need help." After shedding a few tears and using her tails to wipe them away, Kushina returned to the stump. Everyone bowed to her, then hurried into a line as she hopped on top of it. As the senior and his son approached her, Kushina saw them bow down. After saying to the older, "We'll start with you," Kushina paused and said, "What did you call the son that died in battle?" "Rigor," the elder said, his enthusiasm hardly restrained. Before deciding, Kushina said, "Rigor, eh? Then you'll be rigored." The elder started to cry as he was surrounded by the same light that had been used to bathe Kushina's family the day before. The now named Rigord said, "Thank you very much. Rigord. I am so moved." Kushina turned to face the boy and stated, "You're welcome," adding, "You'll inherit your brother's name of Rigor." "Yes, ma'am," the new Rigor said with excitement. Kushina hardly listened to their compliments before returning to his primary task of identifying the goblins. This continued for a few minutes, and Kushina eventually gave names that sounded similar since he was sick of coming up with new ones. She said, "You are Gobta," to a rather uninteresting-looking goblin. Like the others, the goblin brightened and cried, "Why yes, ma'am. Thank you very much." When Kushina eventually made it through all the goblins from adolescence to adulthood, she was beginning to lose interest. We truly do appreciate you giving us all names, but," started Rigord. "We are aware that your magical power is immense, but are you sure it's all right to give us all names at once?" "Well, I don't see the problem," Kushina said, turning to face Rigord and Rigor. Besides, I'd rather get it done now than later, she said, turning back to the line. Who's next? A young girl knelt in front of Kushina, grinning, saying, You'll be Haruna. Haruna glowed, and Kushina leaned in close, saying, Do me a favor and be friends with my sister, Senko, will you? Yes, ma'am. Haruna cried as she rushed to speak with Senko. Before long, all of the goblins had been given names and were occupied with discussing them. After grinning at this, Kushina turned to face the dire wolves. As she looked at him, the Alpha's son raised his head to Kushina, who pondered whether he would be upset with her for killing his father. Her anxieties were allayed when she saw that the wolves were all wagging their tails in excitement and anticipation. Kushina studied the Alpha's son's face as he walked up. She proceeded after noticing a slight breeze before settling on a name. Kushina joyfully exclaimed, All right. Your name is Ranga. Ranga, exclaimed the just christened Ranga, joyfully waving his tail. For Kushina, everything suddenly started to whirl. As she closed her eyes, the entire world became hazy and shifted to the side. The internal magical reserves are now less than what is required. 3.5 days is the estimated time needed to fully recover. After 3.5 days, Kushina opened her eyes slowly and let out a small groan. She stood up carefully and then applied a paw to her hurting head. I need to be more careful when naming others, she reflected wearily, but that really was a good nap. Shina-chan, cried a small girl with fox ears and a tail, dressed as if she were a shrine maiden, and a tall, elderly goblin woman, dressed in the barest minimum, leaned down to gaze at her.